Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's live session. I'm so glad you came to join me. Now, I want to ask you all a question. Have you ever found yourself staring at a big task or project, feeling totally overwhelmed and unsure of where to even begin? Maybe you've tried to break it down into smaller steps, but it just feels mentally exhausting to get started. If this sounds like something you've experienced, then today's session is definitely for you. We're going to talk about why breaking down big tasks can feel so tough, and I'll share some tips and strategies to make it easier to get started and stay on track. If you've ever struggled with this, I promise you're not alone. So grab a drink, get comfy, and let's dive in. Okay, so first, let's break down why this happens. Why does breaking down a big task feel so mentally exhausting, especially when trying to figure out where to start? It's not just about laziness or procrastination. There's some real psychology behind it. Here are a few reasons why it's hard to begin. Cognitive overload. Big tasks often involve lots of moving parts. So when you try to break it down, your brain is suddenly juggling multiple details at once. It can feel like there's so much to think about, and this creates mental fatigue. When you're looking at a mountain of work, your mind can quickly become overloaded, making it harder to process each step. Perfectionism. Sometimes we get stuck because we want to get everything right from the start. We try to figure out the perfect way to break down the task, but the pressure to do it perfectly can make us freeze up. This perfectionist mindset actually creates more stress and makes the task feel bigger than it really is. Fear of failure. If you've ever experienced a setback in a big project, it's normal to feel a little anxious when starting again. The fear of failure can prevent you from even trying to break down the project because you're worried it might not go well, or that you might miss something important or mess something up. Decision fatigue. Making decisions, even small ones, takes a toll on your brain. When faced with multiple steps in a big task, your brain can become exhausted just by having to decide where to start, what steps to take first, and how to prioritize everything. A lack of motivation. Breaking a big task down requires energy to get started. But if you don't feel motivated or inspired, it's easy to push it off. And when you keep putting it off, it only adds to the stress, creating a vicious cycle. Now, beyond just the cognitive reasons, there's also an emotional aspect to this. Breaking down big tasks isn't just mentally exhausting, it can feel emotionally draining too. Here's why. Overwhelm. Looking at a large task or project can bring on a feeling of being overwhelmed. You know there's so much to do, and it feels like an endless mountain to climb. This emotional response can make it difficult to even think about where to start, as the idea of tackling everything feels just too big. Self-doubt. When we often question our ability to complete a big task, especially if we've struggled with them before, The self doubt creeps in with thoughts of, can I actually do this? Am I good enough to finish this? These feelings can freeze us in place, making it hard to take that first step. Avoidance coping. When something feels too hard or overwhelmed, we often try to avoid it. Our brains will subconsciously just tell us, let's focus on something easier or more enjoyable instead. The result. We avoid starting the big task as a result. And then we feel guilty later for not having made any progress. Stress and anxiety. When you can't get started on a big project, it builds up stress. This stress can add to feelings of anxiety, which makes it even harder to focus or feel motivated to break things down. It's a cycle that repeats and intensifies the mental exhaustion. The emotional and cognitive overload we experience when faced with big tasks isn't just in our heads. It affects us physically too. Our bodies become tense. We may even experience headaches or feel fatigue, all because of the mental and emotional strain we're under. So now that we have explored why breaking down big tasks can be so exhausting, let's talk about how we can make it easier. Here are some strategies that can help reduce mental overload and help you break down without feeling drained. Start with a brain dump. Sometimes just getting everything out of your head can help reduce the mental clutter. Take 10 minutes to write down everything you need to do for the task or project. Don't worry about the order or organization. Just get everything on paper. This helps clear the mental fog and gives you a tangible starting point. Break the task into mini tasks. Instead of focusing on the entire project, break it into really small bite-sized tasks. For example, instead of plan marketing campaign, for example, try something like create a list of campaign ideas or research target audience. This makes the task feel more manageable and less overwhelming. Use other techniques such as the Pomodoro technique. If you're feeling drained by the idea of working for long stretches of time, this technique helps. You set a timer for 25 minutes, you work on one small task, and then you take a 5-minute break. This helps keep your mind fresh and prevents burnout. You prioritize the first step. When it feels hard to get started, just focus on taking the first step, no matter how small. Ask yourself, what's the smallest action I can take right now to move this forward? Often, starting is the hardest part. And once you take that first step, the rest of the project will start to feel more manageable. Set time limits. Give yourself a set amount of time to work on breaking down the task. For example, give yourself 10 to 15 minutes to focus only on breaking down the task. This helps prevent the overthinking that can happen when we try to plan for every detail. Reward yourself. When you complete a task or even just the first small step, reward yourself. This reinforces positive behavior and motivates you to keep going. It doesn't have to be big. Even a small treat or a 10-minute break can help recharge your mental energy. Be kind to yourself. Remember, it is okay to feel overwhelmed. And it's okay to move at your own pace. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Be patient with yourself and recognize that breaking things down is still a skill that takes practice. So I hope these strategies give you some ideas to help you feel less mentally exhausted when facing big tasks. Remember, it's totally normal to feel overwhelmed by a large project, but you can break it down into smaller, more manageable steps. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any questions or tips of your own to share, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear how you handle big tasks and what works for you. I hope this session helped you feel a little more confident in tackling your big tasks. Take things one step at a time and remember that every small effort counts. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you next time.